Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, guys, today we are going to talk about tests. Now, we have previously talked about testing your copy, which we will link to the episode about that. Also, we're not talking about copy tests, which, by the way, we have also covered. So we will link to that as well if you're curious about either and or both of these topics.
Unpaid tests.
Exactly.
Yeah,
different topic. We are talking about testing your copy, but today we're talking about recommendations that you can make to your clients to test your copy, increase their success, and also potentially get you more work from your current clients. All sounds pretty good, right? Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Kate, just kind of a little quick recap. Should we talk about why you would want to test copy to begin with?
Yeah, honestly, your client should always be testing copy as much as possible in as many ways as possible, whether it's with their email funnels, with their opt-in pages, with their sales pages, with any of their communications where people are consuming them, to make sure that A, their message is getting across in the most effective way possible, but B, that people are taking the action that they want them to take from whatever that piece of communication is. So there's just so much opportunity for increasing even the tiniest percentage makes a big difference. So even if, a half a percentage of their email list starts clicking through because you tested a subject line that performed better and they have an email list of 100,000 people, that half a percentage is still, I don't know the math. Is it like 50 people?
Quickly gets out phone.
Yeah, quickly does math. But it's a significant amount of people for a very, very minimal amount of work, and we'll dig into other tests you can run in it using subject line just as an example. But this can go in every other, if you get a percentage more people opting into your page from 100 people going to that page in a day, that's one person. I can do that math.
Good job. She's
but day over day, that really adds up. And obviously, if they have more than 100 people, which many of your clients may have more than 100 people going to these various communications, then that starts to really add up and make a huge, huge difference.
Exactly. And, here's the thing. As copywriters, we're always, of course, doing our best work and putting our best foot forward, but we're not mind readers and we're not perfect. Even the very best, most skilled, most talented copywriter with the most experience in the entire world cannot tell you for sure what copy is going to perform best. We're always, like I said, putting our best foot forward, making our most educated guess with our copy, but we can't tell what's going to perform best. I know that the copywriters, the actively working copywriters who are listening will say, yeah, there've been plenty of times where I've written up a headline for a page and thought, gee, should it be this headline or should it be this headline? And you can't always know in advance. And we can certainly listen to the episode about testing copy and why it's so great for you. But also, I will tell you that just anecdotally, we run tests all the time in our business. All the time. And we are constantly shocked by the fact that what we're like, oh, this is going to be it. This is going to make a huge, huge change. And it either doesn't make a huge change, it's just kind of the same, or it loses what we had before was what it's you just can't tell. And it can also differ on by the day. It can differ with the audience. It was, in our other program when I work with business owners, sometimes they'll say, well, what should I do? What should I say? And I'm constantly saying, test it, because things differ from audience to audience. They differ from offer to offer. They differ from business to business. And like I said, they differ from day to day. So testing is crucial for a business, and it's kind of an additional service or an additional help that you can offer to your clients.
Yeah. And as time goes on, things change. The world changes. What resonated I was going to say 5 years ago, certainly might not resonate today, but even something that resonated, 5 months ago, things may have changed. And again, depending on the business, the industry, what your client's doing and what their messaging is, they might just need to revamp it slightly. It might be slight word choices that make a huge difference. It might be the same message said in a slightly different way. And you never know. Yeah. I assume I'm wrong now with tests. My hypothesis that I think will win, I just say, okay, it's going to be the opposite.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll have to dig into that more on a
Yeah.
different episode. Now, I will say that you can offer testing as kind of a value add, which I will sometimes do if I'm writing copy for a client. If I'm writing copy for an email, for example, and we'll get into things that you can offer to test within, or offer to write copy for tests, I should say, with a client. If I'm writing copy for an email and I've written a subject line and I thought, that's good, but also this one could be good, I will often just send along that additional subject line and say, hey, if you're going to run a test, I would test it against this one. So that's always an option, just kind of a regular demonstration of the fact that you are adding additional value. But I think there's probably an argument for me being lazy on that front too, because I could really call that out to them and say, hey, I put together some, I put together some additional options. Okay, let's go ahead and say it's not just an argument. Yeah, is it a value add for my clients? Absolutely. But it also demonstrates laziness on my part, because I could be doing what we'll talk about in this episode, really offering additional options as, yes, a value add, but also an additional service that you can charge for. Once you deliver the emails, in this case, you can say, hey, I have some ideas for things that you could test that could potentially increase your open rates, your conversion rates, your opt-in rates, or, well, not opt-in rates, but increase your click-through rates, all of that kind of thing. Because, to be clear, it wouldn't increase your opt-in rates, because if someone's opening an email, they would have already opted in. That's a different rate measured in a different way. But you could offer these services, this additional copy to your clients as kind of an additional service after the copy has been written. And again, you're not saying, here's copy in case it doesn't work. You're saying, hey, here's some copy options that could potentially increase conversion rate or anything along those lines. Again, you're not making a guarantee. We never make a guarantee, but you're offering that option, that ability to test, because, as Kate said, all of our clients should be testing.
And to that end, before we jump into what you can offer and the various tests that you can offer your clients are the ones testing this. You are not getting in there and fiddling with their email software or their opt-in page software and figuring out how to run an A/B test. You are providing this so that they can do it on their end. That's the role of, maybe a marketing assistant or whoever in the company might be dealing and setting up that tech on that end, maybe a marketing technology person. Not your problem, basically, is all that's to say. Do you want to make it your problem? You could if you wanted to, if that's something you know and have training in and know how to use this software. But it's absolutely, as a copywriter, it doesn't fall within the scope of your role.
Yeah, exactly. And the good news, though, too, even if you're thinking, well, but I'm working with a kind of a newbie business owner, and if that's the case, email software has made it, lots of software has made it easier than ever to run these tests and to get a really good sense of what's actually working. And so if you're
And they have
worried,
great customer support too.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're worried that you're going to be leaving a client high and dry, that's absolutely not the case.
So let's dig into some of the tests that you can offer to provide copy for your clients. And we're going to focus today's episode strictly on tests you can run within an email. Most of your clients working for probably have an email list, most likely. So these are all
goodness
things,
gracious, I hope so.
So these should be applicable for everyone listening. One of the first tests is the subject line. And Nikki alluded to this before. And, this is something that likely you're coming up with this copy anyway. So even, if you send it through on the first round and say, hey, here are a couple of options I think are worth testing, you could certainly do that. But follow up with your clients on some of the projects, all of the projects, quite frankly, that you're doing with them, and say, hey, I'm just curious. I want to see how that performed. Do you have, a month after you delivered? And if you know the date that they implemented it, great. I would say a month is a good time from when you deliver the copy, assuming that they've had it running for a little bit, to say, hey, what are the open rates? What are the click-through rates? And just see what those numbers are and get a sense. If you don't know, ask, hey, what's your average open rate? What's your average click-through rate? So you have kind of a baseline understanding of what that is. And these are even metrics that you can ask for at the beginning of the project to say, hey, what are we working with here? What's the average open rate that we're aiming for? What's the average click-through rate we're aiming for? And then you can kind of see how your email is stacking up against their averages. And if it's below average, or even if it's not, it doesn't necessarily mean it can't improve even more. So for example, if you wrote a subject line, they went out with an email with a subject line that was in the form of a question, just using this as an example. Maybe you provide an option and say, hey, I'm just curious to see if we tested against something that was more direct. This one was curiosity driven with a question. And maybe if we do one that's more direct with a strong benefit in it, to see if that would bump open rates even further. That's certainly an option.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy to think in terms of testing automated emails. If they have a welcome campaign, for example, testing it, because those emails are always going out. It's very easy to do an A/B test and see how they perform. But even for one-off promotional emails, that's still stuff that you can test. Like Kate was saying, you can maybe test more of a theme. So, okay, maybe for the next week, if they send 3 emails a week to their list. Maybe for this week, we're going to go curiosity based. Maybe for this week, we're going to go benefit based. Or maybe it's even like, hey, on this week, we're going to include their first names in it, which can be dynamically populated in most not all email software. Or, okay, in this one, we're going to focus mostly on question. In this one, we're going to list out, or this series, we're going to try naming the product in the subject line, all of these kind of things.
And including emojis is another one.
Yes, that's a great idea. You can, obviously, if you discover that the emojis ones get the highest open rates, you probably don't want every single email they send out to be emoji emails. But you then know, and you and your client know, that those emoji emails tend to get a higher open rate from that audience. So when really important emails go out, it might be something that you want to include. This is all really, really valuable data that you can help your clients get.
Yeah. And as we talk about this, so, as Nikki was saying, with something that continually goes out like a welcome funnel, that you're constantly getting data and information, it's very easy to run an A/B test. And by an A/B test, we just mean one element of the email is being compared against the other. So you're not changing. If you're running a subject line test, it is email A has this subject line, email B has this subject line, but the content of those emails remains the exact same. It's super, super important to make sure you know what's happening with each of your tests and keeping it very clean so that you're not wondering, well, did this end up increasing things more, or did this end up increasing things more?
And so one of the reasons we really suggest starting with subject line is because, and you probably heard us say this before, but the subject line is the most important part of the email. If the subject line doesn't get someone to open an email, if it gets them to delete it instead, then it doesn't matter what other great copy you've put in the email, they're never going to read it. So we always recommend starting with subject line. Subject lines are great and actually a relatively easy place to start when it comes to testing. Now, the next place to move to, and again, this works best usually for automated emails, which a lot of your clients are going to have, or at least pre-planned emails. It's also, even when it's not automated, they can split their lists as they send it out. But this next part is the first line of the email, or the hook of the email, basically. The subject line's job is to get them to open the email, right? But there's no guarantee that once they get into the email, they're going to read the whole thing. So what the first line, the hook, has to do is to hook them and draw them in to read the rest of the email. And if you have a really awesome subject line, so they open it, they get in, and then the quote unquote hook is no good, it's a big snoozer, which, we're all guilty of now and again, even though we do our best, then they're not going to read the rest of the email. They're not going to click through. So when you're testing subject lines, or when your client is testing subject lines, they're looking for open rates. When you're looking for, when you start testing within the body, often the copy within the body, you're looking to measure the action that you want them to take within that email. So maybe it's a reply, or maybe it's a click through a link, or something along those lines. But you don't want, to Kate's point, you want to test just one element of an email. If you go through and change the entire email copy, you can't tell what actually is having the impact.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite tests to run, especially when you're going through with a client of what the email is going to be about, and you both have different thoughts, if you will, about what the most powerful message is and what the most important piece of information is for the audience to know. And so I think it's an easy way to recommend, like, oh, okay, like I think this is a really strong point, and so is that one. Why don't we just test both and see which one resonates more with the audience? And so you can use that lead in to kind of test those most important messaging points and see if one resonates more with the audience than another.
Exactly.
In addition to kind of the style that you're writing it. Maybe you are in agreement on whatever the most important thing is, but you have two different ways of leading into it, and of grabbing that audience's attention and seeing which method is most effective.
And as with any kind of copy, there are a lot of different ways to approach that hook. It could be maybe the story is different, like Kate was saying, maybe the angle is different. It could be the way that you write it is different. Maybe that hook, you decide to write it as a quote instead of the beginning of a story, or maybe you write it as a question, or maybe you write it as, there are a lot of different options. Certainly that's part of what makes copy fun, is there are a lot of different options. You can be very creative, but testing it lets you get a sense of what actually performs and what actually makes your audience interested in, ooh, I read that line, I want to read the rest of it, and I want to take action. I want to click through on this link because you've interested me.
So the next thing that we'd recommend that you can offer your clients to test is the call to action. What is the copy on that call to action? You know, if you are, obviously it'll depend on where you're leading people from that email. If you're leading them to a product page where you want them to buy something, maybe it was buy now. That doesn't make sense because I didn't put that on. Well,
sure, you could. You could have buy. You could test. See, this is the kind of thing. Oh, here's behind the scenes. This is something we might normally cut out. Yes, exactly.
See, I would put buy now on the product page, not within the email necessarily.
Well, you never know. Could be on a button, but that's certainly worth testing, right? But sure, maybe it's you test.
Get product
buy
details.
now, exactly, or get product details, or maybe it's buy now versus buy now and get and throw in a benefit. But because sometimes for some audiences that brevity is going to perform best. They just want to get right to it. They want to see the details right away. Whereas some audiences might need to be enticed a little bit more with a little bit more copy within that call to action. They need a little bit more benefit.
Well, it really depends what's in the email, right? And where this email falls within the customer journey. If they're seeing this for the very first time, they might be a little shy to click on a button that says buy now. If they're like, well, I need more information about whatever this product is. And so it might be the product details is what they need before they hit the buy now. That was the thought process that was going through my head, where I was like, well, wait, no.
But what if it's an email that someone is on, someone got on a wait list for a product?
Yes, and then it would be buy
saying,
now.
Hey, it's here. Buy now. And it's because this thing sells out regularly, they want to get people taking that action in that moment. Yeah. So there are all kinds of different options depending, like Kate said, on what the customer journey is, what the customer experience is, what the purpose of the email is, all of these kinds of things. And also too, to be specific, you don't have to have one wording of the call to action within the email. Generally, an email should have one main purpose, right? Like you're sending out a sales email because you want to get people to buy. It's all the links in that email are going to go to that sales page. Generally, you want to have one main purpose, but maybe earlier in the email, you click here to find out more about blah, 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 blah. And then maybe later in the email, it's, get your own blah, blah, blah. I don't actually use blah, 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 blah. Am I right? Yeah, exactly. But you might want to have a couple of different call to actions within the text. And that also might be a test that you suggest to your clients. Maybe you can test having one main call to action at the bottom, or one main call to action at the top, or adding in two calls to action and just seeing how that impacts the click-through rates. There's some audiences that they open and they immediately scroll to the bottom of an email to see what happens, or to see what's there, what people want them to do. And there are some audiences that really kind of look at that first couple of paragraphs and decide whether or not they're going to take action. So all of these are elements that can be tested. And obviously the placement of a call to action may not be in your control, especially if it's a button or something like that. You can make a suggestion, but all of these could have an impact on that click-through rate.
Yeah, and you can make that suggestion in your copy doc in terms of the link placement to say, hey, this line, I recommend we link this text goes to the call to action in addition to this button that I've included down here with this copy. And you
Mhm.
can call that out, whether it's with a comment. You might also want to,
Mhm.
underline it to make it clear that this would be the hyperlink text if you're recommending link text versus a button versus.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah, and that's just for anybody who's listening to us who's newer, that call to action is really just this. So it is the link, or it
Mhm,
is the button. It's where you're saying, "Hey, do this." It's the verb, right? They take
mhm,
this action. Um, so you have some options there as well. Now there are also additional things that you can suggest to your clients that they could test that are not copy based. Now you might be thinking, well, why would I suggest stuff that isn't copy? Because number one, you're a good professional and you're a partner for your client. If you have an idea like, oh, maybe you could put in, I know we have the quote of the testimonial. What if we tried putting in this? Do we have the actual screenshot? Oh, let's try putting in the actual screenshot of it to see if that's more impactful.
mhm,
Now, are you going to get more money as a copywriter for that? In the immediate term? No, of course not. You're not doing that work. But that demonstrates that you are a partner to your client, and that just makes them value you more, makes them want to work with you more. Don't ever hesitate to share ideas with a client, even if it's not something that you can execute on. But things along those lines are great. Images of
mhm.
testimonials, more testimonials, the placement of testimonials, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, headshots of people that said the testimony that you're quoting, or if it's a subject matter expert within the business to put there, does it having a face with that word, the wording, build trust? Does it increase people's likelihood to say, oh, okay, I believe this person, I trust this, so I'm going to click through and learn more, whatever the call to action is, because I see this human with it, or does it not? Who knows?
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah. Product photos.
Mm-hmm.
If it's appropriate for the brand, I've been seeing a lot of GIFs come through lately. Technically, I know that it's supposed to be pronounced GIFs, but I just can't bring myself to do
No.
it. I've been seeing a lot of animated GIFs come through, and that can be fun if it's appropriate for the brand. And again, the emoji usage, that might be an emojis within the
Mhm.
email if that is appropriate. Even, even links in the PS, maybe. Well, I guess this gets back a little bit to copy, but you could test having another call to action for the same thing in the PS, in the postscript. Or if the rest of the email goes to the main thing in the postscript, you could have maybe just some additional stuff that
Mhm.
might benefit them to know. Like in our welcome series for our copywriting training video. If you guys have signed up for it, then it's probably a while ago and you don't remember it. But in the first or second email, I think we direct people to watch the video because they only have limited time to do it. But then in the postscript, we say something about like why I called my company Filthy Rich Writer, because a lot of people are like, what's up with that? And we have a good reason for it. And for us, being filthy rich means having a job you love, being good at what you do, and making great money doing it. And as writers, we should be able to make good money. Not to get on a tangent, but that it's a question that we know that people
Mhm.
have, so we put it in there to answer it. It's not the main call to action, but if someone is reading the email and they're interested in it, then we want them to take the main call to take action on the main call to action first. But also, if they're interested, check out that link as well.
Mhm.
So those are really kind of the main areas that you'll find yourself being able to test. Oh, actually, I thought of one more thing. Testing the friendly from, the
Oh,
the
yeah.
from line. Now,
Oh, I thought of another one too.
oh, it's so fun.
Did you?
So the first thing is that sometimes companies will send
Mhm.
from the company name. Sometimes they'll test sending from someone within the company. Now, think about this strategically, because I definitely have gotten emails from just a name and been like, I don't know this person. Open it up, and then it's from someone in the company, but they were just trying to get my interest. That personally kind of ticks me off, and I usually end up deleting those emails because it
Mm.
feels a little gimmicky. But if the person who who runs the company is well known, or if it is maybe a well known brand ambassador for that program. If it's Filthy Rich Writer, but it's Jennifer Lopez for Filthy Rich Writer.
Ooh.
Jen, call us. There's no way we can afford that. But if she's willing to work pro bono, you can maybe get some interest in there. You can also, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, you have to send something that's not going to be spammy, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But, instead of Filthy Rich Writer, maybe it's FRW's Friday fun email. Not a great example, but you know what I'm saying. You can switch up, you can get just a little bit creative. You don't want people to be like, who is this?
Mm-hmm.
But you might be able to catch their attention in a slightly different way by changing up that friendly from.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what's within the content of the emails, because it can get very clickbaity very fast, especially when you use someone's first name. To your point, if it's, I don't know why Gerard Butler's the first name coming to mind, but we're going to use that.
We're going to dig into that too.
I haven't seen him in anything. Anyway, but if that's the email, and then in the email, it's, I don't know what he would be talking to me about in an email that would make sense, but maybe it's like, here's my latest movie, come watch it, and here's how great it is. Great. But I think if it was like, buy this, vitamin mix, maybe he's sponsoring vitamins, but I think there's a difference, I guess, is all that's to say. If Bill Gates is writing me to buy a Microsoft product versus Bill Gates giving me information of, some thought leadership article that he's written, and that's, more learn more about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go with, I feel like, what fits the content of the email, because again, I think it can sometimes help open rates, but then to your point, if you're getting something, you're like, oh, they're trying to sell me something, let me delete this is not effective.
Again, who is this? Clearly not if it's Gerard Butler. I'm going to see if I can change all of my emails to you to be from Gerard Butler.
Suddenly Kate's writing back really fast.
Increased my open rates to her. Interesting. But yeah, it's look past what you usually do on a daily basis. Look for ways that you can shake things up. Now, obviously, things that you do differently can become gimmicks really quickly. Like I've been in this business long enough that I remember when the first oops emails went out. You know what we're talking about, the emails that go, oops, we messed up the link or that kind of thing. And actually, I feel like now we've come full circle and they're a little bit more legitimate. But originally, someone would send out an email and it was a mistake. Oops, we sent out the wrong link. Here's the right link. And what companies noticed was that they got a really high open rate when they sent out an email that went with the oops. So then there was a period of time when companies were sending out oops emails like crazy, like, we made a mistake, because people were opening out of curiosity to see what was in the email. And actually, really, now that I think about it, I think we're back to most oops emails being actual legitimate, oops, sorry, we sent you the wrong link, which happens. Nobody's perfect.
We've done them, yeah.
Yes. But so that's the thing to think about, is when you do something too often, it becomes a gimmick. When you jump on a bandwagon, like the oops email or something like that, then it becomes a gimmick, and it might work for a hot second. It's not going to work for long if it does. But look for ways to be creative. Look for ways to be your client's partner in copy and marketing, not just, as we always say, not just someone who takes orders and delivers your copy.
And then too, looking at the open rate and the click-through rate together and not necessarily separately, because to that point, you might have a huge open rate for these oops emails, but then if you have a really, really low click-through rate, then okay, is it actually that effective? To me, a high open rate with a very, very low click-through rate on something like an oops email would tell me that people were very disappointed with what was in the content of the email. And so we got all of those clicks and didn't deliver on what we needed to deliver.
Exactly. And while this shouldn't drive everything, keep an eye on the unsub rates. Now, people just naturally unsubscribe. I am trying to be on an unsubscribe kick lately. To if I'm not opening something regularly, I don't need it in my inbox. So I do that periodically, and we all should really. But if there's a spike in a client's unsubscribe rates, that could be an issue in the content of it, in the copy within the email, the body of a copy of the email. It could be in the subject line. It could be, is the subject line clickbait And clickbait, as we know, is something that's like, oh, attention grabbing, but is never paid off. If you pay it off, if it's something that's attention grabbing, and then they open it up and you explain it in the email, you pay it off in the email. Hey, here's how to get $100,000 for free. And in that email, you tell them how to get $100,000 for free. If you know that, again, call us,
please.
But if you don't pay it off in the email, then you're probably going to get a lot of people who are like, this is crummy, and then unsubscribe. So it's not a metric that you need to primarily look at, but it's always worth keeping an eye on with your clients, not for your clients, with your clients.
And one last thing you can test with the copy of an email is the subject line / pre-header text. Yes. Including it at all, seeing if that makes a difference. If you include it, recommend doing so. It's another opportunity to get more information in front of your readers and get them to open, kind of supporting that subject line. But again, what are you putting in that pre-header?
Yeah, sometimes it's called a snippet, sometimes it's called a pre-header, but it's the copy that populates in the reading pane. It's the copy that populates right after the subject line. It kind of explains the rest of the email, and sometimes you'll see it as at the very top line of an email. Sometimes they will hide it within the email itself. So because there's sometimes the pre-header will say something interesting, and I'm like, oh, their snippet will say something interesting. I'm like, I want to know what more about that, and then can't even find it in the email. But it's just a little bit more information to entice you to open the email. Not everybody does it. Your client may not do it, but it's always an option. It's always one more thing to test, one more opportunity to offer your services.
Yeah. And that's going to show up differently depending on mobile, desktop, email client, Gmail, Yahoo, if anyone uses Yahoo still, Hotmail. I don't know, does that even exist? But depending on Outlook is very different, I feel like, than Gmail and how these things appear, and especially mobile to desktop. So knowing that there's not necessarily a perfect character count for these, but testing, short snippet versus a longer snippet versus and seeing what kind of how that impacts open rates. And certainly your clients might have even deeper data, they might not, about their users. And, are 80% of them opening emails from desktop versus mobile or vice versa? And they might have that information for you that might impact how you're writing and how you're approaching these emails, which is just a good question to ask too. Hey, do you have any insight into how many of your users are consuming their email on desktop versus mobile? Because that could also help you with the body of an email too, of like, okay, I really need to make sure I break up my text so it's super digestible for a mobile device if it's a very mobile heavy user group, which more and more we're going that way.
Exactly. Okay, so if this was helpful, if you liked this, let us know. Leave a review, give us those 5 stars, and let us know. Type out the review, let us know that you liked it.
We have comment on YouTube if you're watching it.
Exactly. Oh yeah, great point. We have more content. We can dig into this on landing pages, on sales pages, on opt-in pages, all of that kind of stuff. But obviously, we only want to do it if it's something that you're interested in. But leave us the reviews or comments, because we read all of them. And we appreciate them. We do. We definitely do. So thank you for that. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.